Utter Worldie. In this episode called You Can't Be Beat, I speak with China international and Beijing Guoan's central defensive midfielder Nico Yennaris. Nico has played for over 100 league games, represented England at under 17, 18 and 19 youth levels, and now for China as a full international, having gained citizenship in 2019. Nico is one of the fittest and most athletic players that I've worked with, and we discuss how he maintains and achieves such high levels. We discuss the importance of individual fitness programs and testing, warm-ups, recovery, and the psychological strength required to achieve optimal fitness. This is discussed in depth regarding his individual specific practices, insights, and regimes alongside the current research and guidelines. Welcome, Nico. Thanks for joining me.
Hello, Rich. Thank you for having me, mate.
How's it going? All right?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Good, man. I noticed you had a game yesterday. You won 2-0?
Yeah, we had a league match last night. Got 60 minutes in my legs and managed to get the victory as well.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. And that's in the Chinese Super League, isn't it now?
Yeah, Chinese Super League.
Yeah, okay. And just going back, some of your history, you've played for some clubs there. So Brentford mainly, wasn't it? 144 appearances, I see. Wickham, now Beijing. Prior to that, you started out at Arsenal, didn't you?
Yeah.
And represented England at under 17, 18 and 19. And made the transition playing for China now. What's that like?
Yeah, it's been an amazing experience, to be fair. Back in 2019, I made the move to China and naturalized my citizenship and became a Chinese citizen to enable me to play for the national team in China.
Wow, okay. Because you grew up in East London, didn't you? There must have been some transition.
Yeah, it's definitely different to Beijing. But yeah, I grew up in East London all my life. Obviously went to the Arsenal Academy there from 7 years old over at Hayland, which was on my doorstep. So I was there from 7 to 2021 at Arsenal. So just went through the whole academy. So yeah, growing up in East London, then obviously transitioning to London Colony to then being in Beijing is a bit of a difference.
Yeah, what would you say that difference is? I can imagine quite a bit of a difference in terms of lifestyle.
Yeah, I think lifestyle, culture, it's difficult to explain. You'd have to get people to come over and to understand it, because I've tried it many times to explain to people what it's like, but until you come out and experience it yourself, it's really hard to explain. But,
okay, no, fair enough.
Yeah, it's kind of like living and playing football in central London, if that kind of narrows it down.
Okay. So your citizenship, if you like, was that right word? Citizenship would be your mother. She's got Chinese background, and your dad. I know your father. Don't know your dad's got Greek background, isn't he? So
yeah,
is that how that worked?
Yeah. So when I was at Brentford, we was actually looking into this for a long time, just to see the possibility of playing for a national team. Because that has always been something that I was keen to do as a child, and obviously having a Cypriot heritage with Chinese and obviously English growing up in England and stuff, having played for England youth level, etc. As I got older, obviously playing for England senior teams obviously a massive task if you're not really in a Prem team playing week in week out, as you've seen most of the players are. It was just a question of like how could I maximize my my career in that way. So obviously we looked into playing for China and Cyprus, etc. And a player in my team at Brentford at the time, the year before me, moved out to China. So we spoke to the same agent that done his deal, and that's kind of how how the conversations really started. Once they kind of knew I had a Chinese background, they obviously then done some work on their end, and they was very interested to bring me out there and the national team. And yeah, that's how it all kind of started, really.
Brilliant, brilliant. How does that differ then, say, from league football? Because you played in a number of league games there, both in England and China now. How does the international level, how's that different?
Yeah, I guess, obviously you're playing against the best players from around the world in different countries. So for me at the moment, I've only really played against more of the Asian teams. On that side, I haven't really been played against like big nations, if you want to call it that. I haven't really played against them at the moment. So yeah, you're playing against the best players from each country. So yeah, it's obviously a whole nother level, and yeah, it's exciting at the same time.
Definitely, still to come. Fair play, still to come. Okay, so I just wanted to talk to you about a few things that you do. So in terms of fitness and things like that, because I remember that you broke all records, if I remember rightly. Remember we did a line run once?
Yeah.
You must have been in your teens then. So we did a line run. Never forget it. So it's every line on the pitch and back. So from the goal line to the 6, to the 18, to the half, to the 18, to the 6, and then to the goal line back. So to put this into context, average was around 2 minutes 30. Poor was about 2 minutes 45. Good was 2:15. So that was good. I remember yours being around 1 minute 53. And I said to myself, how has this guy done this? Bearing in mind, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd been out for a while, hadn't you? You were injured for a while. Came back and you broke that, not by 5 seconds, 10 seconds, but by a good 15 seconds. And that run is it's a hard run. It's a hard run. It's tough on your legs, isn't it? And your lungs, and it's the turning. There's no hiding place from it, really. When you did that, I thought, oh my God, how has he done that? And there's a quote, it says, will is a skill. And I think you showed plenty of will in that task that I set you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you find that tough, just out of interest?
Yeah, it's definitely a blow. Like my legs are burning or heavy, but I think one thing with me, obviously every player is different, but when I get set a target or when I get set something to try and hit, like it's in the back of my mind, like I've got to do it. So the motivation then becomes 10 times for me. But yeah, it's funny that because it's been, I don't know how many years since I've done it. And I always get a reminder, even recently when I did my rehab down at Colney for my previous injury, somebody actually reminded me again. It was like, oh, you still have that record at Hale End for that line run. And no one's beat it. And I was like, Jesus Christ, that's been how many years?
I don't think it'll be beaten because I looked at your face.
I think it could, but I don't know.
Well, we'll see. We'll see one day maybe. But honestly, you were so determined. So yeah, I mentioned some of the scores there. So yeah, you've got that record and you still hold that record. And in terms of fitness now, so what you're doing over in China, what's your fitness routine at the moment?
So our schedule is obviously, it all really depends on the schedule of the season, to be honest. Our schedule's been hectic this year. They've kind of started the season late and kind of finishing the season a bit earlier. So they've crammed in our schedule. So we're playing every 3-4 days. Excuse me. Okay. So at the moment, a lot of the focus is on more recovery in between games and not so much training. But if I give you an example, like growing up, off-season programs and stuff in between seasons, I would heavily focus on those just to make sure I get a good foundation before going into a season. I'd work on things that I would ask the questions to managers and I'd ask the fitness coaches as well, like, what is it that you feel like I need to improve? What is it that I need to get? And I'd kind of plan my off season around what the feedback was. So one season, for example, I went in and I spoke to the boss and I said, what have I got to do? What have I got to improve to be, in and around the first team, give myself a better chance, etc. And he said to me, you need to be a bit more powerful. So off season, I went and worked on my power and strength, and I did a whole program on that during the summer. Majority of the time, I was always down at the athletics track in the off season. I had a friend of mine whose dad was a Olympic sprinter and a GB coach, and I did a lot of athletic training when I was younger with Mike McFarlane. God rest his soul. He recently passed, but he was my trainer with one of my friends who was his son, and we used to train in the off season together. So I'd be doing a lot of like circuit training with the athletes, and then obviously gym work as well. But because he kind of understood my football side as well, he kind of integrated both with the athletics and the football side, because obviously athletes run very different to footballers. So he wasn't trying to make me an athlete just to, with the technique and everything. He knew, we wasn't ever going to get that technique as footballers, but if he could help add one or two things to our game to help us, then, we would do that. So I spent a lot of time down at Lee Valley in my off seasons, just, doing training there, working on fitness, working on strength, agility, and range of motion and stuff.
Okay, because when I refer to the evidence, so look at the evidence now for football players. They've shown that the speed, agility, quickness, perhaps that you were doing at Lee Valley, and some of the strength training. So the strength training, so high intensity training, can improve the speed up to about 10 meters by about 3%, but not your maximum speed or a squat jump. But it can certainly help within the speed and agility, especially with the first 10 meters or so. Is there anything like that you would focus on?
To be honest, my 5-10 meters sprint I was always very quick in my 5 and 10 meter sprints, and it was kind of the main focus for me because the way I play with high intensity press and being able to cover ground quickly. So that was one thing I was always pretty good at, and I kind of just wanted to maximize everything with that. So we did a lot of work, on those first 5-10 yards and being explosive. So I think that's probably helped me with the way I play a lot, because footballers are never really going to sprint 100 meters in a game. Maximum they might sprint is maybe 40, 50 at tops. So those kind of smaller distances was something that I would focus on, because that's something that my game was kind of based around. So we did a lot more work on the smaller distances than the large, long distance ones.
Perfect. Yeah, and then to put that into context, that would be closing down. If you're playing like a central defensive midfield, that's what you'd be doing, wouldn't you? Like short and sharp turns, closing down, holding off, getting your body position in the right position, moving players sideways or to other players. So that's essentially what you'd be doing, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, and then if we go through, so let's say warm up. What would your warm up be before a game, Nico?
Warm up before a game. So as I've got older, it's kind of changed a bit. I'm not really a spring chicken no more. So now my warm up, we obviously do the team warm up on the pitch and stuff, but I kind of do like a pre-activation in the changing room, in the warm up area in the stadiums now. So my match day routine would be obviously sort myself out, get changed and that. Then I would head into the physio room. The physio would do about 10-15 minutes with me of just mobility, stretch and stuff on my hips, hamstrings, glutes, just around that area, just to kind of get firing and get moving. And then once I've done my mobility stuff with the physio, I'll then head into the warm-up area, call it. In our home stadium, we have bikes, so I'll do like 4 or 5 minutes on a bike just to get the blood flowing. Then I'll do a quick foam roll, just through all the muscles, quads, hammies, glutes, calves, and then I've got like a lacrosse ball as well, which I would do like a few minutes on each side on my glute and like the hip joint, just to really get deep into the hip and then release, tension and stiffness in that area. And then I would work through active stretching, active mobility work. Again, it's more just to really feel loose and feel ready to go. And then as it's leading up to going to literally getting outside the last 10 minutes or so, I'd start doing a bit more core work. So I'll do a bit of core, front planks, side planks, dead bugs, and before a bit of mobility on the back as well, just to loosen up the lower back. And then some TheraBand work, whether it's mini bands on the glutes, whether it's the long TheraBand attached to the wall or something, where you could do like an adductor swing with the TheraBand, just to give a bit of tension, just to fire up the adductors. Same thing with the hamstrings. So yeah, just more of like an active work, pre-activation, core type mobility work before I go out.
So that's quite a comprehensive warm-up, spring chicken, isn't it? That's it's quite a bit you're doing there.
Yeah, I have to as you get older, mate. You got to.
Absolutely. Because a lot of the things they do with the warm-ups nowadays are based around the FIFA 11 Plus warm-up, where they do 3 stages of 15 structured exercises consisting of core stabilization and dynamic stabilization and plyometrics. But you seem to be doing that, already, aren't you? You're doing that even before you go out on the pitch. You're doing quite a bit, and that's been shown to reduce injuries by about 30% or so. Is that why you do it? Is that why you do? Is it injury prevention or preparation or both?
It's a bit of both, to be honest. Because I do a bit of mobility stretching daily, and it's something that, like I said, as I've got older in my career, and obviously having had a long-term injury as well, these are things that I've kind of just learned to do for myself, because I know obviously my body reacts differently now. Like I said, like we pointed out before, I could go on a pitch and just do that line run, and I could probably do it without even having a warm up. But now there'll be no chance I could do that. So obviously, as I've got older, I've learnt my body, learnt what I need to do, learnt what I need to adapt to, just to give myself the best chance to just keep playing injury free and feeling good going into games, going into training. These are things that I do daily now, just before training and before games, that just to feel ready, feel loosened up and feel ready to go. I can't just walk off a bed anymore and just be like, yeah, let's go and play football today and do absolutely nothing, because I don't wake up in the mornings anymore not feeling any kind of pain. So
I can do that, Nico. You can't do that. I can just get out and play like in a few minutes. It's not a problem for me, mate.
Yeah, the intensity you play at, mate, and the intensity I play are probably 2 different things. So yeah, I can't do that anymore, mate.
That's a fair point. I think mine would be walking football. That's why.
Yeah. So
okay, then what do you do for a cool down?
So obviously after games, I'll do ice bath. Directly after a game, we've got ice bath set up in the change rooms. I'll be doing ice bath. I'd have my protein shake ready for after games. I'd have my recovery tights ready. Stick them straight on after you shower. Get home, put the Normatec on. Again, keep that recovery process going. Make sure I get a good meal after, and then day after a game, depending on obviously if we're in with a team, we'll obviously do another warm down, etc. Could consist of bike, 20 minutes on the bike, some mobility, stretching, foam rolling, swimming pool if we have access to one, and then contrast bathing. sometimes I'll take myself, because the setup's different out in China. Kind of some places you got to kind of go and do your own stuff. So I went and found like a cryotherapy chamber that I'm able to use after games, etc. So I use that every now and then. Get a massage, a recovery massage, and get all the rubbish out your legs.
Yeah. They say that nutrition and rehydration, when I say the evidence, they say that is the most important. And then there's moderate evidence for the cold water immersion, compression garments, foam rolling, and so on, and sleep. But the main thing, and then they call it low effort approaches, so things that don't require too much input, would mainly be nutrition, the rehydration. But you doesn't surprise me that you actively seek these things yourself out, and you do a lot of things individually. I always thought that you did, away from the training ground and away from the games and so on, that you would do extra, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. I've always been that type of person, that type of player, to go and do my own thing away from the team, because it's difficult for somebody, for example, like yourself. You've got to look after 20 players. It's very difficult to do 20 individual programs with everyone. Everyone's body type's different. Everyone's, got their own issues. They've got their own preferences to things, what makes them feel better, so I get it. It's very difficult in a team sport where, as a coach or member of staff, to do something for every player. So that's kind of why I've always done my own thing, because I've always done what's best for me. I'd obviously always take part in the team sessions, whether it be, warming down, etc., or gym work and that. But then obviously, if it wasn't given to me, I would obviously go and seek something more personal for myself. Just because I know my body better than anyone else. So if I feel like, doing this works best for me, and that's able to get me to be in a good place to perform and feel the best I can feel for the next game, then I'll go and do something different. That's not knocking any work that any coach or anyone has ever given me. It's just a personal preference to making myself feel better. And I think nowadays as well, you see a lot more players now. They have their own physios, they have their own personal physios and fitness coaches and nutritionists, and you see a lot more players around the world having people travel with them and move in with them, etc., working with them every day.
And I think that's important as well, is identifying what works for you, isn't it? It's all very relevant. Me saying the evidence is this, so I could say the evidence that cool downs, there isn't a great deal of evidence for it. Whether that's integrating some dynamic stretching, some static stretching, there isn't so much evidence for that. But if you find that useful, and it helps you prepare, or even gives you time to think about the game and then move on to the next, then it's working out what's important for you, isn't it?
No, 100%. Because like I said, everyone's different. Everyone's body reacts differently. Some players hate ice baths, so they don't do it. Other players don't mind it. Other players love it. Everyone's different, but it's not necessarily, you must do it. It's gonna, make you feel better, because it might not. Some people just don't like the feeling of it. So it's all personal preference, really, and you just need to find a way. And that's with, like, obviously trial and error as well. Just what works best for you as a player, and what makes you, and what's going to help you feel the best. Prepare for the next game. And so that's something I've always just tried to do for myself. So I'll always seek advice and speak to people I've worked with in the past, and try and find the best people in certain areas to get advice from and work with. So
and picking bits that are relevant for you, right? So picking out
exactly.
And I mentioned low effort approaches. So when I was playing non-league, about your age actually, they used to get wheelie bins in, fill them up with ice water, and you'd go in there for a minute, and then you jump out, and then you're in the shower. You do it a couple of times. But I have to say, as I got older, the game, say we played Saturday, then Tuesday, if I did that on the Saturday, it certainly helped me for the Tuesday. As I got older, I think early 20s, I probably wouldn't have noticed the difference, but I think that did help with recovery, certainly.
Yeah, no, that's exactly my point before that. As I've got older, I've had to do you've had to do more as you get older because you're not 21 anymore, where you can just play Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, and do minimal after a game, and you still feel alright. Being 30 now, doing a Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, there's no chance I can't do any type of recovery after a game because you just would not be feeling right for the next game at all. It's just not possible anymore.
And do they monitor your training load and your fatigue?
Yeah, so we've all got GPS and GPS monitors and stuff on every day. They'll have a look at the data, and I think that's become a bigger thing now in football, and I think probably across all sport, where the data now is a lot more training load and stuff is managed through the GPS. On top of obviously asking players how they feel. So yeah, I think that's been a thing that's changed over time. It's just the data and GPS management for the loading.
Yeah, and that's to help adjust your program in the training sessions, isn't it? That's the intention. And do they couple that with other measures, Nico, like perceived exertion, like ask you to score how tired you are, or any sort of more objective mark?
Yeah, every place is different. Some coaches they ask for an RPE after each training session. Others don't. I think it's still preference for the coaches and stuff how they want to work. But yeah, I know. For example, at Arsenal, when I was doing my rehab, the academy boys there, for example, they had like each individual player would have different targets and stuff for training. So, if certain players didn't really hit their targets in training, they might have to do a couple runs after training just to make sure they've hit their distances or their high speed running, etc. So everyone was hitting their zones. And that's kind of, I've kind of noticed that throughout different teams as well, that kind of happens now, where, if a player hasn't done enough in training, the fitness coach will have a look at it after training and say, you've got 1 or 2 box-to-box runs to do just to top up, and then you're done. So I think that's obviously now the game's changed in a way where everything's kind of being monitored.
Yeah, so I think the advice is to get those physiological markers, whether it's your heart rate, like lactate, blood lactate, and so on, or even like urinary markers. Couple that with like a rate of perceived exertion to get an idea of where you are. I think that's generally the advice. But so since you broke, you still got that record. Have you broke any other out in China? Have you got any records you want to tell me about?
Nah, I don't think I have. I think
that was it. That was a mic drop. That was a
I mean, you got to set the standard high, right? You just got to go for the hardest one. Exactly. You got to go for the hardest run and then do it, I guess. But I can't really think of any because we don't. Pre-seasons have kind of changed over time. There's kind of less kind of just line runs and basic runs that you got to do. It's more integrated with just footballs now and dribble circuits and stuff like that. So
yeah, and that's interesting because I know that Liverpool, they employ the lactate testing, so they'll. Do you know much about that, Nico? So
I've seen or read little bits of it. They thought I'll just keep running or something as hard as they can or whatever it is, and I don't know how fast or whatever they could do. But if you want to explain it, you can, mate.
I'll do my best. So they'll do similar runs, and then every so often they'll stop, and then they'll take like a blood sample from the ear and measure lactate levels. So where the idea that the higher threshold training intensity was effective, there wasn't much evidence for that. So what they look at basically is when you do those runs, so the lactate measurements that are taken from the blood analysis, once you reach a threshold, then you're told to stop. So that's the marker that they use. So it's not so until you can't do any more. It's until you reach that level, which is interesting because it used to be, wasn't it? So say in that line run or on a bleep test, that wouldn't be the case. It would be until you actually reach that threshold. So I think the guidance is that is perhaps more accurate, and training at that threshold the evidence isn't there longer term, let's say, for fitness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we've always just been running, so you can't run no more.
Exactly. So I remember, for me, bleep test was always a good marker for me. So 14, I think 7 was my best. And I remember average was about 13. So my best one was about 14.7. I think average, what was acceptable, was around 13. I think 11 was poor.
Yeah.
So that was always a marker for
Yeah, I
me.
think
So
they've
if I
always
knew,
changed over the years. The bleep test
yeah,
and yo-yo test, and they've always changed because like now you start from like level 13, level 14
right,
and
okay,
stuff.
yeah,
I remember, so I think it's all changed.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm
that's
not sure how many teams will do bleep tests and that anymore.
no, I don't. I think you're right. I think you're right. I
I
think
think that
it's
there's a run. I know there was a run. There was a run at Brentford that we did, and there was a run at Arsenal that was very similar. I think, but it was like I think Brentford one was a 50 meter line, and Arsenal one was a 100 meter line. But it was like you had to get 1,500 meters minimum in 6 minutes,
right.
and that
What
was
did you
just
get?
literally just back and forth, back and forth. I did, I did one time. I remember actually when I was younger. I did a first team pre-season, and we did that 6 minute run. And I did it with the first team at Arsenal. I think I was about 18, and it was the fittest I've ever been. But it was weird because I had glandular fever at the back end of the previous season.
Mm-hmm.
So that summer, I barely did any like training. It was just pure, just cardio training that I had done. But because I wasn't allowed to do like any heavy training.
Yeah,
So I ended up just doing like body weight, like circuits and stuff. And this athletics body weight circuit that we did, you'd think to yourself, how the hell is this getting me fit? But when you started running, you realized how fit it actually got you. And you didn't realize at the time. And that circuit we had to do every day before training. You couldn't start training until you finished that circuit.
right.
And it was just a body weight circuit. It was just like press ups, sit ups, burpees, running man, sumo squat, sit ups, blah blah blah. It was like 6, 7 exercises, 10 reps of each, but it was like 10 sets, and there was no break in between. There was no nothing, and it was just like a basic circuit. And then when I was like, I hated doing it every day. I hated it because I was like, oh, we got this circuit again, but we had to do it every day, and it was like I'd always question like the coach. I was like, how's this going to get me fit? And he was like, you'll see, don't worry, you'll see. And then when we started running, like at the end of the training sessions, when we had to do some like finishes, basically, I was flying, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I've never felt this fit in my life. But it was all from literally doing those circuits, just non-stop. How my fitness had changed, and
Right.
from doing those like every single day, I went back to the Arsenal and did a pre-season, like I said, with the first team, and we did that 6 minute run, and I finished first in the run out of everyone. I was flying. I was up and down that pitch. Like
Put it down to that.
I would put it down to those circuits. I promise you now, because
Yeah.
anyone that's ever asked me for a circuit, I've always just given them that because it's not hard, like to figure it out. But you do it yourself. I challenge anyone to do it, and you try and get 10 sets. Jesus Christ, you're dripping in, and your heart rate is through the roof.
Okay, you're gonna
I
have to
promise
mark
you,
it.
Rich, I'll text it to you after me, and you can give it a try because I've given it to my cousins, I've given it to my friends. They get to about 4 or 5 sets and they tap out. They're like, "No, I can't do anymore. I'm knackered."
Right, I think we're going to
And I'm
market
and
this. We put it it's going to be the new insanity. This is going to be the new one.
honestly,
We'll put
mate,
it out there.
yeah, honestly, I did it every day. Every day I went to training. I had to do that circuit before we could start training, and you weren't allowed to start training until you'd finished that circuit.
Right.
And
Okay.
because we was training in a group as well, we'd kind of be pushing each other. And then if someone hadn't finished it or they're falling behind, you had to wait for them. But we'd have to then encourage them to get it done.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like you didn't want to be that guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, I got it. And so, what do you do? So let's say, do you still do much away? Because if you've got your games in the week and then your games, say the weekend, do you still do much yourself? Like, do you do some of your recovery work down at the gym?
Yeah, so every week, obviously in between games, I'll do my own recovery stuff. I'll do bits, and then like in the gym, for example, I'll try and get like one decent lift in the gym for my leg, for example, like deadlift or front squat or back squat, whatever. I try and get one lift in each week in between games, just to kind of get that tolerance for the load for the muscle. So yeah, I'll do a little bit of upper body as well. Like, it doesn't have to be too heavy or too straining. It'll just kind of just be more maintenance work.
Yeah.
And just kind of just maintain the strength based stuff, and power based stuff between games. So it won't be high reps or anything. It will just be moderate weight, moderate repetitions, maybe 4 to 5 reps.
Okay.
And I'll just kind of just do a bit of work on each.
Okay, so more for maintenance, that one, then, I would say.
Yeah, especially when you're in season and the games are thick and fast. It's just more maintenance. You don't really have time to really work on trying to build anything. You know what I mean? Because you ain't got the time and recovery time to be trying to do, improve your power, improve your strength in between games when you're coming every 4 or 5 days, you've got games.
Yeah, and just we've talked a lot of the physical attributes and tests and what you do in particular. Where do you go mentally when you have to do this? So I would try and think of something. If I knew something tough, I was doing something tough, I would try and put my mind somewhere else. So let's say I would think about something completely different, get my head down, just, you know what I mean, Nico, where you're just doing it, but you're not actually thinking about it. So I would kind of put my mind outside of it myself, so I'm not fully in it, if you know what I mean, but I'm thinking of something else while doing it, so I'm not thinking of it that it hurts or this is tough. Is there anything particular that you do for that?
I worked with a psychological coach for a while back in the day, and he was ex-SAS, and he actually told me that, when you're feeling really like dead and you can't do no more, he was like, you've only used, like, I think, what did he say? He said you've only used like 40% of your max, and it's a fact if you look it up and stuff. And he was like, when you're feeling really physically dead and you can't push yourself anymore, he's like, you're only at 40% of your capacity. So when he taught me that, and I kind of learned about it with him, it kind of opened my eyes. I was like, wow, I've still got so much more to give. And it's kind of, you got to just kind of work through that barrier and push yourself through that barrier to keep going. And then you'll realize that, you know what, you wasn't as dead as you thought. But when I was doing, for example, when I did runs, and it was like those 6-minute runs or whatever runs it might be that were difficult, for me, it was always the mental side of it was, you can't be beat. You can't be beat. You ain't gonna feel no pain. And when I was running, I used to say to myself, like, no pain, like no pain. And I'll be running, I'll just be doing these runs, just cruising through it. And that's what just made me cruise through it, because I'd be telling myself, like, you've got no pain, like you're not feeling no pain, you're good. And that's kind of how I always push myself through it. But that's what I did for myself. Obviously, everyone's different, but I always found that when I would talk to myself in my head when I was running, like, giving myself kind of words of affirmation, if you want to call it, like, I was always I always felt like I had an extra boost. And I could just keep going.
That's what the psychologists would call, like, what would be self-limiting. So that 40%, if you know you're not limited by your boundaries in a way, so you'd push those boundaries. And then I'm going back to that line run. That's exactly what I saw when you did that line run, was that determination that you would push past it, and it wasn't a particularly joyful run, let's say, but you pushed through it. You did, and that's what I saw. So no, that's brilliant, Nico. That's brilliant. Thank you for today. You've revealed some secrets there for us. Some nuggets there of
give me some gems.
Brilliant. Some gems. You've given us some gems, and you much appreciated. Yeah.
Free game, mate. Free game.
Exactly. All right, Nico. Thanks very much.
All good, Rich. Top man. Take care of yourself, mate. Good to speak to you.
Will do. Thanks, then. Bye now.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Utter Worldie.